Hello and welcome to a new Google Sheets video in Practical Sheets. Today we're going to do a very interesting project. It's an event planning or a catering planning sheet where I could have my events. I'm going to show you very quickly the demo and then you can go right into it if you like. So you have some events. You identify them by an ID, an event name, a customer, and that's it. Then you're going to event details. With the reference of the event, you can start creating the items of the event. You're going to quote some Coca-Cola, some sandwich, some empanadas, some quiche, some pies, whatever, being products that you buy or products that you prepare. Okay, so you prepare them, you create your list here. It will bring the price and it will bring the cost. So you know, not only you can quote to your customer the price, but you also know operatively, you will know the operational cost or the gross cost maybe, and the gross profit, depending on the product and the quantity of the product. But in order to know the cost, this is where we get detailed. We go to our items, and each item you will give a category. If it's a product that is ready to sell, that's like a bottle of something that you buy and then sell the same, you don't need to add any value. Or if you have some products that you're going to prepare, or if you have some products that you prepare but you're going to use in other preparations, in other recipes. For example, you do a salsa and the salsa needs tomatoes, but then the salsa, you're not going to sell the salsa, but you're going to put it in an empanada, for example, something like that. Okay, so then we do the recipes. That is when we join each product with each ingredient. And finally, you have a sheet where you have the raw materials, is what you buy in the groceries that you buy in order to prepare the recipe. Even if the recipes could be that are raw materials, or the recipes could be for internal products like the salsa. So this is it. Remember, this is not an inventory. It's just a way to organize your products, your recipes, your raw materials, and that you can get a final cost, very easy, of each item and then of each event. So I hope you like it. I think it's a bit long, but just let me know if I'm missing something. Of course, from here you can expand it using other videos, other help. You can create some invoice, you can create some grocery lists, and much more things. Okay, but I think it's a nice base to start. If you like this, I know you're going to enjoy it, but if you do, you can support me by subscribing to the channel, giving me a like, or going to the Patreon page where you can download the template if you don't want to hear me an hour and a half babbling. So we're going to divide this in multiple tabs. I don't know how much I don't know how much I will be able to advance this through, but at least I'll try to leave everything, all the bases, and then you on your own or on your second part, I could go further or complicate it a bit or add some code, but for now I want to leave it working in the most basic way. So we want to do a quoting assistant for catering. This is so specific, but I think it's a really interesting project. This is why I did it, or why I'm going to do it. So we're going to do a cascade style sheet. So the first thing I'm going to do is an events table where I can list the event. I always recommend to have a reference. This will work in the future. So maybe just event ref. And this could be, you could just number it 1, 2, 3, and that's it. And I could have here the name of the event, for example. It could be Charles' party or wedding rehearsal. I don't know. And then you could have more things, customer, email. You could have just a sheet just for the customers, because maybe you will have repeat business and you can select your customers. This could work, but for now, this is what I want. And the idea is that I could have for the event a quotation. That's it. How much will it take? Will all the event cost? But for doing this, we would have to have an event listing or an event detail where I could quote exactly for this event what items am I going to need. So this will be called event quotation or event details, maybe. So first I'm going to have the event number. So I could redirect it here, event ref. Then I'm going to have the item ref, and here it will be the price, number of items, quantity, and finally total cost or total price. So for example, Charles' party is event ref 1, so let's go there. So we're going to do 1 and 1. The item ref, this will be 1 and 2, and here maybe we can have the name of the item, item name, so it's easy to see what I'm referring to, not only by the reference, but the reference allows to have a code or a number that doesn't repeat itself, and I'm not relying on a name that is badly written or that has or is in uppercase, lowercase with an extra space or whatever. So this is the validity or the good thing about the references. Let's say my item name will be, what do you want to sell? Let's say Coca-Cola, and I'm going to do some quiches or sandwich. And it's a very small party, so this will be 5 and 5. And the total price will be, here maybe I can have a unit price. Let's say each Coke is $5 and each sandwich is 10. So the total price will be this by this. And let's switch autofill, and that's it. So when I have my event, I could say, let's say my customer is Charles and the customer of the wedding is Marie. And so the quotation or the total cost will be, I'm just going to sum, if I'm going to go here and sum in the event ref, in the event ref, everything that is this event ref 1. And then what I'm going to sum, I'm just going to sum the total price. That's it. So here I know that this is 75. I'm going to give some currency. So this is $75, 25 plus 50. It's perfect. Okay, so now we start to get into the rabbit hole, because now you're going to tell me, okay, but I don't want to write every time the price of the Coca-Cola, and maybe I have some comments or something about the Coca-Cola. So how do I bring the Coca-Cola when I want, by the reference or by the name? And then I could put it directly. So this is where we get a new sheet that will be called item or items. So items, we can borrow from here some things, basically item ref, item name, and unit price. Let's delete this one and let's copy these ones we had, Coca-Cola and sandwiches, all of the item ref, the item name, and the unit price. Let's copy this and let's paste it here. Okay, so now we have it, and we could say, okay, perfect. But well, the idea is that I can bring just the item ref and it will bring me automatically the Coca-Cola and the sandwich. So I'm going to change this or replace this by a dropdown. Control Shift down 2 times. I'm going to right click and say, actually, I'm going to do it a bit differently, because with the new way that sheets work, I can do it a bit differently. So I'm going to stand here, I'm going to right click and say drop down. Okay, here in event details B2, I'm just going to write column B. This way I don't have to drag down until the B. I just type it here. I think it's a bit more efficient. I'm going to select drop down from a range, and the range will be my items, this item ref from A2 up to A, because maybe I will have in the future 100, 200, 1000 items. So let's say, okay, here I will have them all. This is what I don't like, because if you have 1000, then you have to go down, down, down if you want the advanced options. In advanced options, we could say that we can reject the input, is good. And for now, you could change the style, ship, arrow, plain text. Let's leave it ship for now. It's a bit weird for how we did it in the past, but you could change it so it looks closer to how we used to do it before. So if you want to do it, just for an example, let's go to advanced options and let's change it for arrow. And it's similar to how we did it before. This changes a bit, but it's not so weird or not so different. Okay, and now I don't want to have to write the item name and the unit price. Actually, I could change this so I know that item name and unit price all come from a formula, and I'm not going to have to write it. So I'm going to use a formula. I'm going to delete both of these. I'm going to use a new formula from Google Sheets that is called XLOOKUP. I haven't done a video, but I'll do it soon to explain to you. It's very similar to VLOOKUP, if you know VLOOKUP. If you don't, it's a nice formula to learn. XLOOKUP will look up in a vertical table, will look up a reference. So the first thing we're going to give is the reference we're going to look up, is this number 1. A bit more zoom, comma. Then I'm going to say in which column, I'm going to tell XLOOKUP in which column I'm going to look for it. So I'm going to the events, sorry, not the events, the items, and let's select this column. This is where I'm going to look for the reference, okay? Then comma, and then I'm going to say, okay, you look for it, but what I want you to return is not the reference, but I want you to return the price. And the price is in this C column. So I'll select the C, and that's it. Let's close the parentheses, and perfect. But the thing is, I wanted to also work for this unit price. And given that item name and unit price are close to each other, are next to each other, then this XLOOKUP gives me a really nice feature, is that I'm going to change this item C so that it also takes the item C and items D. Enter. And why it's not working? Actually, this is not CD, but BC. Okay, perfect. And if I drag this down, then it will work perfect. Now, one last thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to wrap this up in an if function, because what happens if I drag this formula down a couple of rows below, I have an error. So instead of wrapping it in an if error function as we do with VLOOKUP, this has XLOOKUP has a really nice function that is at the 4th argument. I could put what happens if it's an error. So if it's an error, I'm just going to leave it empty and drag it down, and it works perfectly. Much better than VLOOKUP, in my opinion. So I'm going to do the same here. I don't need to do the same here because this formula is taking C and D. So I'm just going to drag down from C2 up to the last column. How do I do this? Do this, Control Shift down 2 times, Control D, I duplicate it, and every time I put a new reference, it will bring automatically the name and the price up until the last row. Excellent. So this is good to know, to tell the user that this is going to be a formula. Actually, this is going also to be a formula. So I could, and I have it here, and I could drag it down also. What happens if I drag it down a bit? It will leave me 0. So I could wrap it up in an if function. I'm going to say that if this column, let's say the event ref or the item ref is empty. So let's say if B2 is empty, then don't put anything, please. And if it's not empty, if it has a reference, then you do the formula. And now I can do the same I did with my XLOOKUPs. Control Shift down 2 times, Control D, and everything should work. If I put here, and then I put some quantity here, it will work. Actually, this works better just when I put a quantity. So not B2, not empty, but E2. Just when I put the quantity, it should calculate. Control Shift down, Control D, and let's try it again. Only when I put my quantity, it will calculate the total price. Excellent. And finally, I'm going to select all these 3 and color them in a light gray so that we know that there are formulas there. Then I will do the formula later, but for now, it's a good practice so you know that these are formulas. Maybe if you want to have all the formulas in one side, this quantity, we could place it between B and C, but it's up to you. Now, let's go to our items. Coca-Cola is not a problem. Coca-Cola is nice. It's good. Okay, there's no problem because the Coca-Cola is a product that I buy and I sell, so it's not a problem. So in your catering, you buy everything already done, then we're done. You can go home. This will work perfectly. You just put all your items and that's it. However, the thing with catering is that you are doing recipes. Okay, so for example, you have the sandwiches. Okay, how do you know this sandwich costs 10? Well, actually, you do know. In terms of quoting, you don't need anything else, okay? Because you have your prices. The thing where it gets tricky is in the costing. How do you know how much it's going to cost and if you're making a profit or not? So the problem is in the costing, not in the pricing, okay? So maybe we can have here costing, unit cost, and here unit profit, something like that. So how do we know the cost? For Coca-Cola, it's easy. We just call the supplier. How much does a Coca-Cola cost? It costs $3. Okay, $3. And my profit will be this minus this, and that's it. And that's it. Okay. Oh, this is artificial intelligence. It already know that it was profit, so it did it. But how do I know how much a sandwich costs, especially if I'm going to make it? So this is where it gets tricky. Okay, we need to do our sandwiches. So let's do them. Here I'm going to create another sheet that is called recipes. Okay, this is similar to what we did inventory for restaurants. So actually this video came about by a question somebody made me via email regarding this video, but I think it's better to do it on its own and not starting on the other one. But many of the things we're going to do here, it can relate to this other video already made. Okay, so recipes will have the item, will have the material or the ingredient, and the quantity. So for example, let's do a sandwich. Okay, here I can bring also my rule similar to what I did here with the item reference or with the item name, however you prefer. Let's keep everything in the same sense. So we're going to do item ref. Some of you will prefer to do it directly with the item name. It's not a problem. In the future, if you're going to have a lot of references, maybe it's good to have the reference. So again, the same thing here. I'm going to right click, go to view more selections, data validation. Okay, here we're going to do the same, drop down from a range, and we're going to select from our items all of these references from A2 up to A, so that it always brings all the available references. Again, advanced options, we could say arrow, reject the input, done, that's it. And we're going to bring the same XLOOKUP. So I don't want to do it 2 times. So I'm just going to copy it here and paste it here. But not from B2, but A2. A2 is where I have my reference. Let's try it out. 1, perfect. But here I don't need the price. It's not important. So I'm just going to put B colon B. Only this column. I only need the item name, so I have the reference. Coca-Cola will not be necessary, actually, because Coca-Cola, it's not an item that I will need a recipe for. So here starts to get interesting, because maybe we can have here the category of the product. And by category, I mean if it needs recipe or not. Let's call this prepared. The sandwich is prepared. The category is, how do you call this? Ready to sell, I don't know. So you don't need to do anything. This I prepared, this I just buy and sell, and I don't need to do anything, okay? Prepared. So what I could do is only show here, only show the prepared, but this I needed to do it in an auxiliary sheet. So I can have a sheet that later we can hide. We'll call this prepared items. But I don't want to have it separated, so that I could, when you want to select it, you can select, especially in the event details, you can select in the same quotation, you can select prepared and not prepared. Okay, so in my prepared items, I could do this with a query or with a filter function. Actually, it's easy with a query. Query function, I have a couple of videos in the channel about this. So we're going to do query, and let's go to our items. Later we can better organize the sheets, the order of the sheets. So I'm going to select all of my table, and I'm going to say, I don't need all of this. Actually, I just need the reference and I need the name. That's it. Maybe even just the reference, but let's do both. Select, I'm just going to need select A, comma B, where the F column equals to prepared in single quotation, prepared. Let's close this, close my double quotations, close my parentheses, and here I bring it sandwiches. And if I had another one, let's say 3, and this is what? Empanadas. And it costs 5. And this is prepared. Here in prepared items, it will bring my empanadas. Okay, so now that I have my prepared items, I can go here to my recipes, and I don't want to be able to choose the item ref Coca-Cola. I just want to be able to choose the reference that are prepared. Okay, so let's change our rule. So right click, drop down, and this is not going to be items A to A, but let's go here. I'm going to delete this. Prepared items from A2 to A. Okay. Here in advanced options, let's see if I have to change anything. I think it's okay. Let's apply. There are one other drop down. Actually, just this instance. This is nice because I don't want to change the rule for all of them. So for example, here in event details, I do want to continue with all my references but in recipes, I only want this following. Let's delete and let's choose again. And you see I can only choose 2 and 3. And here I'm going to broaden the range here. So this is A2. I'm going to change this up to A and click done. And that's it. And I'm going to bring the same XLOOKUP I have here. So actually it's already working. So empanadas, and if I choose to, this is sandwiches. So now I'm going to take this formula and drop it down, Control Shift down, Control D. Excellent. So that if I choose my empanadas here, I have empanadas. Okay, so now this is working. I'm going to just have sandwiches because I'm going to put the ingredients of the sandwiches. So I always have the same example, but it works well. Bread, and this is the thing. Where am I getting the bread? For now, let's just put it here, ham and cheese. That's it. It's a very, very simple sandwich, nice for catering. And how many breads do I need? I need 2. 2 what? This is the main point that I discuss in detail when we do the inventory for restaurants. What do you mean by 2? In ham, I also may mean 2. And in cheese, I may mean also, let's say 4. 4 what? I need to tell it what. So here I can say unit. So here it will be slice, slice, and slice. Maybe let's say that we order some special breads. So this is not a slice, but unit. And it's 1 unit, 1 bun. Okay? So before getting further into the rabbit's hole, let's go back to our items. We know it's prepared. So in event details, to know the cost of a unit, I need to do a formula. And the formula will be this one. Given that I'm not going to put a specific number, the thing I can do is to have a different cost. So this is prepared cost. And this is manual cost. So for the Coca-Cola or for something that I buy directly, then I'll put the cost here. In the prepared cost, I'm going to have another formula. But first, I need to put the cost. I skipped the step. In recipes, I need to put the cost here. So let's say unit cost and total cost. So the unit cost, let's say each bread costs $2. Sorry, $0.5. And the slice costs $0.3. And the cheese costs $0.2. How do I get these costs? Give me 1 second. For now, I'm just going to multiply the quantity times the unit cost, and I'm going to autofill for now. Then I'm going to drag it down further. For now, I just want to show you the example. So let's go back to our items, and I'm going to say that the prepared cost for our sandwiches is, we're going to sum if. Where do I want to look for sandwiches? Remember that in sum if, the first thing I need to go and look is where do I find my criteria. So in recipes, I'm going to say here in item name, you're going to look for these sandwiches, and you're going to sum the cost, this total cost. Okay, so I have it here. The prepared cost is 1.9. If I drag this up and drag this down, this will always be 0 Coca-Cola. But maybe we want to make this a bit more explicit. So I'm going to say that if category G3 equals to prepared, then you're going to do the sum if. If not, then you don't do anything. Just leave it blank. Okay? So if I drag this up, it will be empty. If I drag this down, here it will be 0 because in theory empanadas is prepared. The thing is I haven't created the recipe for empanadas. So for now it is 0. So I think this works fine. Okay, so now that I have my costs, I could include it also in my event details. Remember that I did an XLOOKUP that brought the item name and the unit price. I could also do that it brings the manual cost and prepared cost, but I can do an if that only brings or the manual or the prepared. So I'm going to insert here the unit cost, and it's going to be a very similar XLOOKUP. So it's XLOOKUP. I'm going to look again for my item ref, where in items, here in A, and what will I bring? I'll bring the manual cost first. If I bring this down, here it will bring nothing. So I can say that if XLOOKUP brings nothing, then do another XLOOKUP, but now not in the D column, but in the E column, where is the calculated price. Okay, let's close it. And now first it looks for the cost in the manual area, and then it will look for the cost in the prepared area. And now I can have here my total cost and my total profit. So total cost will be very similar to price, unit cost time quantity, and total profit will be price minus cost. Here, actually, this is gross profit because I'm not taking into account the people and all of other things. It's just the price minus the cost of the goods. Okay, so now let's see if everything is working well with my formulas. Here, formula is going down perfectly. Here I have to drag down the formula. It is dragging down. The unit cost, I should drag it down. So I'm going to bring this up with the if. I forgot one thing in my formula is that if this is empty, then this will be the XLOOKUP. But if it's not empty, then I should put this XLOOKUP. So this might work now. I'm going to select this formula, Control Shift down, Control D. And to remove this error, I'm going to put an if here saying that if this event ref is empty, then just leave this empty. If not, we're going to do all these other if and the XLOOKUP and all that. So Control Shift down, Control D, and it's working great. The same we're going to do for total profit, total cost, and total gross profit. I'm going to copy all of this part, all of the if, and I'm going to paste it after the equal sign. Also here. Remember that Sheets automatically completes the parentheses. I'm going to select these two columns, say Control Shift down, Control D, and it should work now for any other item. Okay, and given that these are also formulas, I could put the gray here, and I think that my event details are perfect. Now I need to come back here and see how this is going to work, the items and the prepared items. Something is not working. Here is where F is prepared. Given that I added a column, I need to change this in my prepared items. Instead of F, I'm going to change it for G. I had an error there. Now I have my recipes, perfect. Now you're saying, okay, where did you bring this? The items, the unit cost, the total cost, etc. So I'm going to have a new sheet that is called raw materials. In the raw materials is where I'm going to add all of this, all of the ingredients. To be perfectly consistent with what we have been doing, I'm going to insert a new column and call this ingredient ref. And bread will be 1, ham will be 2, cheese will be 3. I'm going to select with the headers, these 3 columns, and then this column, the unit cost. Let's copy it and paste it here. So I'm going to have my ingredient reference, my ingredient, my unit cost. Okay, until that, everything is perfect. But where do I get the cost? The thing is that I don't buy a slice of ham. I buy a pack of hams that has 12 slices. I'm going to add a column that is going to be called units per pack or per buying pack. For example, I'm not going to buy a bread per unit, but I'm going to buy 10 breads come in a bag, for example. In the ham, they come 20 slices, and the cheese come 20 slices. And I have the cost per pack. This is why I buy. I don't know the cost per slice. I know that the pack of bread costs $5 and the pack of hams costs $6 and the pack of cheese costs $4. And then I'm going to divide. This is the magic. The cost per pack over the units. It's the same. I was very lucky. So now I have the unit cost. So I don't need to come here to the recipe and do some mental math. I just say, okay, let's say that my sandwich will also have tomato. So 4 is tomato. And tomato comes per unit. How many slices come per unit? This is a bit more complicated. Sometimes it's per gram. So here you could say the unit has 100 grams. For now, let's say that a unit comes 6 slices. And the cost per pack is, each tomato is $3. Or let's do it even crazier. Let's say it also will have lettuce. Let's say the unit is gram. And how many grams do I buy? I don't know. 500. That is more or less a pound. And the cost per pack is $2. I'm going to drag this down as I've done in the past. Remember that if I drag it here, I may do it in 2 ways so that I can drag it up to the end. I'm going to do an if error. If error, then don't put anything, okay? And Ctrl Shift down 2 times, Ctrl D, and it works. So the gram is 0.004, but when I add it to my sandwich, I'm going to add my tomatoes and I'm going to add my lettuce. So here, let's say I should have here a drop down. So let's do, you already know how to do this. Right click, drop down. We haven't done this one, so I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to add a rule, and this rule will be that in recipe C2 up to C, we're going to have a drop down from a range, and the range will be raw materials. Start in A2 and let's go up to A. Let's click done. Let's close this. Let's go to our recipes, and now I can choose this. Okay. For the future, maybe it's easier to select the ingredient. Okay, so 4 and 5. Now what is missing, that what I haven't done, is to put this all with an XLOOKUP. So I can come to my ingredient and bring the ingredient, the unit. I can bring the unit cost. Actually, I'm going to put the quantity here. And that's it. How do I do it? Let's do our famous XLOOKUP that we are using a lot today. So what we're going to look for, the reference, where in the raw materials, in which column, in this. And sorry, I put this with semicolon, but Sheets fixes it anyway. So what columns do I need to bring? I'm going to bring ingredients, I'm going to bring unit, and I want to bring unit cost. I don't need these two. So in order to bring unit cost, I'm going to mix here a new concept that is called arrays. I'm going to put here start an array. I'm going to use my comma, and then I'm going to select this other one. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to close my parentheses. Okay, now I'm bringing the bread, the unit, and 0.5. And I can drag this down again. Let's see what happens if I drag it up to here. Remember, I need to change the last argument, just adding a comma, so that if there is an error, it will bring just a space. Ctrl Shift down 2 times, Ctrl D, and it should work. That if I put, again, let's say I'm going to add again more tomato or more ham, I have it here. And the only thing I'm missing is my quantity. This is manual, so all of this is a formula. The total cost is also a formula that we're going to do right now, very similar to what we've already done. The total cost is quantity times unit cost. And let's do our famous if. If this item ref, sorry, it left out, if the item ref is empty, then don't put anything, and if it's not empty, then put my formula. I'm going to bring this down, Ctrl Shift down 2 times, Ctrl D. Actually, this shouldn't be with the item ref, but with the quantity, as we did in the event details. So let's do this with G2. Again, Ctrl Shift down, Ctrl D, and now it works. Perfect. Now let's put some quantity. So how many slices? 2 slices. This is very, very expensive. Let me see if everything is fine. Is units per buying pack. Let's say it brings 10 tomatoes and the cost per pack is $3. Sounds about right. It's better, but it's still a bit expensive. And the lettuce, maybe, given that this is in grams, let's say we're going to put 100 grams. Okay, so this works for grams, for milliliters and all that. It should work. Okay, and this should have materialized this 2.9 in my items. Drum roll. Let's see. So 2.9, it works. Excellent. Just one more thing. So in my event details, everything is perfect. And if I go to my events, remember that I did the quotation. So the quotation, it's also fed by this. So I can know the profit for each item and I can know the profit for each event. This is the magic of these cascading sheets. So the cost is very similar to this. I'm going to sum if also. But now I'm not going to sum GG, but I'm going to sum the cost. In this H and in the other one I. So here it will be H. This is the column I want to add. And in the profit, well, actually it's just subtracting this by this. And that's it. I could also drag these 3 down. Remember, you have to be careful that this is not 0. So if the event ref is empty, again, we've done this multiple times today. If A2 is empty, then leave it empty. If not, put the sum if. The same for cost and the same for profit. So let's copy this. Let's paste it here. Let's paste it here. And we're going to select all these 3. Ctrl Shift down 2 times, Ctrl D. And now it should work. Remember to put this light gray so that we know that this is a formula. What else are we missing? Just one? Well, actually a lot of things. We could, from these, we could do the quotation from Charles Party, do it in an email, send an email with the detail, bring the details. For example, we could do a dashboard where I select the name of the event and it brings me all the items. So I could present a detailed description and quotation to my customer, all that. But for now, there's just one thing left. What happens if my sandwich has, for example, a sauce that I also prepare? So I could go here to my raw materials and do the sauce, but this sauce has tomato, has onions, has other things that I also need. Let's go to items. We're going to create a new prepared item that I could sell if I want, or I could use. The idea is that I could use my items also in my recipes. And we're going to prepare here salsa. For now, it's not going to have unit price. It's not going to have manual cost. It's just going to be prepared cost, but remember that I need to put the prepared here. We could also do this with a drop down. Actually, let's do it. Right click, drop down. I'm going to have 2 options, ready to buy and prepared. This range will be from G2 to G. Let's click arrow, reject the input, and let's click done. Okay, perfect. So this is prepared, but I still don't have any cost. What I'm going to do is to select my sandwich. I want to not only be able to select the raw materials, but also the same item references. So how do we do this? First thing first, the item references, I'm going to change it a bit. I'm going to call this item 001, and the same for all of these. This is going to damage a lot of things. So let's go back first to my event details. Here I should select item 01, item 02. Actually, it's not going to change that much. Here it changed in recipe. I'm going to change this for item 002 and copy all this down. And I think that's it. So we differentiate the prepared, let's call it, from the raw materials. So I'm going to raw materials. I'm going to change this again to R001. This is raw material. And up to 005. So here my recipe, I will select R001, R002, R03, R04, and R05. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. I'm going to add a new item that is this salsa, okay, I004. So I selected here salsa. I'm going to use my tomatoes, R004, 4 tomatoes for 1 pack of salsa. But now I want to be able to select for my sandwiches I004. So how do I do that? One thing we could do is that in items, I could have another category. Remember, we have ready to sell, prepared. Here we could call this sub recipe or internal product, something like that. So let's go to our validation, our dropdown. We're going to add a new one that is called internal products. Let's click done, apply to all, internal product. So salsa is an internal product. So here, for example, I don't need almost any of this because I'm never going to buy it. And maybe you could do both. You could have the unit price if you want to buy it, also have the possibility of both. But for now, we are interested in that it's an internal product. So what I want to be able here in my reference is to select not only the raw, but also the internal. So how do I do this? I'm going to have an extra column. So actually these prepared items, I'm going to call it differently. I'm going to call auxiliary sheet. So here I know that I have my prepared items. Call these prepared items. Maybe I need to change a thing in one of the validations on the dropdowns. Okay, prepared items. This is one. The other one I need to create here is in total ingredients plus prepared. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in one single list, I'm going to bring the raw materials and the recipes and the items that are internal products. Okay, I don't know, maybe it's a bit weird, but let's see it in action. So go to our aux sheet. I'm going to say for now, I'm going to filter. Let's remove this. I'm going to filter from my item ref. I'm going to filter by my category, where the category is internal products. I only want to bring the internal products. Okay, and now I want to concatenate this with my raw materials, with all this. So let's do here, let's bring maybe a unique list of all my raw materials from A2 up to A. And now I want to concatenate these two. How? With the arrays that I think we already saw in this very, very long video. So here I'm going to include this in an array. It shouldn't change anything, but I'm going to put a semicolon here and add the unique. So I have it in just one list. Let's delete this. And now the final part is in my, let's go to my recipes. When I select this, so I'm going to go drop down. It's not going to be from raw materials, but I'm going to select it from my auxiliary sheet here from D2 up to D. Okay, let's click done, apply to all. So now in my recipes, I not only can select the raw materials, but I can select my prepared items. Okay, the thing is that this will break my XLOOKUP. It brings an error because remember my XLOOKUP is only looking for raw materials. So I need to tell it that if the first letter here is R, do this. But if the first letter is I, then I need to do another thing. And then we'll deal with my condition. If you want to skip all these steps, you can just go to my Patreon page and download the template. Maybe it's easier and you can just search the video if you are confusing something or you want to change something. So this will be XLOOKUP. What I'm going to look for my reference, but now I'm not going to look it in the raw materials, but in my items. So here I'm going to look, and what do I need? I need the item name for now. Let's hit enter, and that's it. The item name. The unit, we could leave it blank. It's not a problem, but I do need the unit cost. We could have a unit and put here in my items, put here, I don't want to put it here because it will damage a lot of my formulas, but maybe the unit Coca-Cola is a bottle, the sandwich is a unit, the empanadas is unit also, and salsa will be pack. I don't know if it's clear, I could do a similar XLOOKUP to this one. Actually, similar to the one we already made. It's not only B, but here I will put a comma, and then I'm going to my items in H. And let's close our brackets, and that's it. So I have a pack. So it's clearer and everything looks nicer. And the unit cost, I do have it. Where it gets interesting, because where do I get the unit cost? Actually, the unit cost will come from this same sheet. So what I'm going to try to do here is to do a sum if inside this same sheet. So I'm going to sum if the item reference is this item reference, and if so, I want to sum the unit cost. Let me see. Apparently it worked. The only thing that is not working here is that I004 is not giving me anything, because remember that in my auxiliary sheet, I told her to bring everything that was prepared. But actually, here I also want to bring the internal products. So instead of prepared, I'm going to say that it's different, ready to sell. So that it brings prepared and internal products. And in order to remove these headers, I'm going to say that this starts in A2. Perfect. So now let's go to my recipes again. I4, it's working. Let's say, just for sake of argument, that I'm going to my salsa include some cheese. Cheese is R003, R003. So cheese slice, and let's say this is 1. Okay, so now I know, actually, I made a mistake. This shouldn't be, I shouldn't sum it on the unit cost, but on the total cost. It's how much does all the recipe cost, because here you can see that the salsa does not cost 0.5, but actually costs 1.4. That is 4 tomatoes and 1 cheese. So let's change this for HH. And now it's more like. And now in my sandwich, I need from salsa, I don't need 1 pack. Maybe I just need 0.25 pack, a quarter of a pack. Okay, so this is how we do internal products also. The only thing we're missing is that here these couple of formulas are only working for this row 7, and I want it to work every time that this reference is an I, and when it's an R, it keeps working as it has worked. So we're going to change a bit. We're going to put an if. We're going to say that if this starts with an R, there are many ways of doing it. Maybe the easiest one is to do left. With this left function, I just look at this and say that if left 1 is R, if the first letter is R, in quotation marks, then do this. So it continues to work beautifully. Okay, if I bring it down, you see here I have false, so I need to put this second part as what happens if it's not R but I. Okay, so here at the end of my if, here I can put a comma and then put the other condition, but I need to be careful and here change this for a 2, and that's it. And then again I can bring it down and it works beautifully. It doesn't work because in my second XLOOKUP I didn't put a value for error, so here I just put a comma and it works really nice. So I'll drag this up and then drag it down, but I'm missing one thing, this sum if, because this sum if is only working when it's an I, it's an internal item. Okay, so to this XLOOKUP I'm going to put an array here, and after my XLOOKUP I'm going to say comma and then my sum. So let's copy this again, I put the array at the beginning and here a comma and then the sum, and I close my array and I need to erase this, and now it works. So let's bring it up and let's bring it down. Control Shift down to Control D, and that's it. So I'm having this 0. To avoid this 0, maybe I just need to do here another if, just to be a bit more explicit. If left C10 1 equals to I, then let's do this. If not, it will be false. This false, and now I can change this false just with an empty string. So after the if, at the end of this if, I'm going to put just a comma, and that's it. Again, one last time, I drag it up, I drag it down, Control Shift down, Control D, and it works beautifully. So now I think it's working really, really nice. Maybe it's a bit crazy. Actually, I put this ready to sell, but this is ready to buy. Where do I have my mistake? Ready to sell. Yeah, it's ready to sell actually. So I'm going to go to my drop down and change this for ready to sell. Maybe it's out of today's scope, but I could do a grocery list depending on the event. Because if I know that event 1 has Coca-Cola and sandwiches, item 1 and item 2, and I know in my recipes that item 1 is just item 1, but item 2, the prepared ones, only for the prepared, I have all of these. Maybe I could do a query or a filter function where I sum up all the ingredients I need and how many do I need for 50 people, for 60 units or whatever. Okay, I know this got a bit crazy, a lot of shit. I don't know if a part 2, maybe no one sees this, but if a couple of you find it interesting, please let me know. And you can go to my Patreon page and not only to support me, but to download the template and work it from there. See you next time.